Some are calling it a potential energy revolution. Off the coast of Israel, in the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, explorers have found the largest offshore gas reserve in the world in a decade. This is a major development because Israel has long been one of the few Middle East countries without its own oil and gas resources.
The joke was that, why did it take Moses 40 years to bring people of Israel from Egypt to Israel? Because he looked for the only place in the Middle East that lacked oil and gas. So that was the joke. But we proved the joke to be wrong, and actually we know that Moses brought us to the right place. Delek Energy and its American partner Noble are behind the discoveries that will start producing natural gas for customers in 2015. Energy expert and former CIA chief James Woolsey says the gas fields could make Israel energy independent.
Well, they're extraordinarily important and strategically very advantageous, I think, for Israel.
Not only is Israel sitting on huge natural gas reserves, the country is also rich in oil shale, a fine-grained rock from which oil is extracted through cutting-edge technology. Scientist Harold Vinegar says the amount of oil shale buried here might equal the oil reserves of Saudi Arabia.
We think it's conservatively estimated at about 250 billion barrels of oil contained in the Israeli oil shale, probably the second or third largest deposit in the whole world. And it has a tremendous potential to make an oil industry here.
Experts say there's enough oil shale to produce at least 50,000 barrels of oil a day, enough to meet Israel's military and civil aviation needs for 25 years. Israel Energy Initiatives is now performing quality tests.
I have a piece of oil shale here that we've just cored in this rig behind us.
Vinegar is a former chief scientist for Shell. He says the samples show that oil quality is high before it's even refined. As the world population increases, so will the demand for oil, and that will push up the price. Countries like Israel that import most of their energy will have to develop unconventional resources.
There's nothing scarier than running out of energy. I mean, wars have been fought entirely for oil, and so this is something that we feel we're doing for Israel, which is to develop the oil shale here.
And if his group's plans work out, this land will hold even more promise for the future. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Let's talk about the rat of the week. Why is Bayer Corporation the rat of the week?
Internal documents show that after this company positively, absolutely knew that they had a medication that was infected with the AIDS virus, they took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The medicine's called Factor 8. It was an injection medicine that was used for hemophiliacs, mostly children. Children had been born with an incurable disease.
Hold on, Mike. So, hold on. So you're telling me that Bayer knew that this drug was infected with the AIDS virus. They yanked it from the market in America, and then they dumped it in markets overseas?
They had to figure out a way, Joe, to make a profit on a product that they could not sell in America. So they made a huge profit. They dropped the product in Japan, Spain, and France. By the way, Joe, government officials in France that allowed that to happen actually had to go to prison for it. In America, not one corporate executive for this company has been indicted or even criminally investigated by our Justice Department.
Why not? You're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit.
Mike, I want to read to you what Bayer told the New York Times about this scandal. They said Bayer behaved responsibly, ethically, and humanely. Decisions made nearly 2 decades ago were based on the best scientific information of the time and were consistent with the regulations in place. That sounds like a lot of legal mumbo-jumbo. Now, you say you have internal documents that show that they knew that this drug they were dumping was tainted with the AIDS drug? Or the AIDS virus?
The documents show that there was no question that this company absolutely understood the risk, that they knew that it was contaminated. It wasn't a possibility. They knew it was contaminated. Americans were dying from the product before it was pulled off the market. The only reason it was pulled off the market is because lawyers found the documents and showed it to the government, and finally the government said, you can't sell it here, but then the government allowed them to dump it in Spain, France, and Japan.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Well,
I want to read to you what the New York Times said, and this is an investigation that they also did, and they said the federal government was part of the problem while the Food and Drug Administration told the company not to ship the drugs overseas. The man responsible for the drug supply, quote, asked that the issue be quietly solved without alerting the Congress, the medical community, and the public. This is a cover-up, and our Congress is not doing anything. What should Americans do?
Virgin Mary statues desecrated. News Channel 5's Alex Hagan is live outside Our Lady Queen of Peace Church, where members fear the vandals might strike again. Alex?
Well, Michael, this is one of the statues that was vandalized. Take a look at her face, this Virgin Mary. You can see black paint on her face, but also look at her cloak. It is completely black. You can actually see the difference between the original color blue and what it was painted. Now, we're told this could cost hundreds of dollars to repaint. There's also 2 other statues on the grounds that were defaced. Now, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is investigating. They believe the vandalism happened either late last night, early this morning. Today, church members did their best to clean up the paint. However, we're told the statues may take extra work. Painters will have to be brought in. The church also received a disturbing phone call threatening more vandalism if the church cleaned anything up.
It's not a prank. It's devilish. It's irrespectful. It is hatred, I would say.
We don't want them to come back and do more damage. I mean, it's our church.
Now, the church hopes to clean up everything that was vandalized by this weekend for church services. In the meantime, deputies, they are patrolling the grounds to make sure this doesn't happen again. Reporting live tonight in Delray Beach.
In the next couple of days.
Right. And you've said before, Morgan, that you're a man of God. When you did this, and so many of these questions were posed.
When did I say I was a man of God?
You're not?
No.
You're a man of faith.
Faith. It's a big difference.
So all right. So the question of faith leads us most of the time to a God. What is your view of faith?
The question of faith is whatever you actually believe is. We take a lot of what we're talking about in science on faith. We posit a theory, and until it's disproven, we have faith that it's true. If the mathematics work out, then it's true, until it's proven to be untrue. For instance, if you remember, there was one point when we had mapped the universe and we knew what all of the matter was. We knew where the edge of the universe was. And then we got the Hubble telescope and we got, uh-oh.
Not quite there. It's a little further on.
Right.
And all of that really gives you a sense of perspective as well. When you know, back in the early days, we thought the world was it. And then we found that there was a solar system.
Right.
Then we found that there was a galaxy. And then we found, oh, no, there's not just this galaxy. There's hundreds of millions of them. And maybe are there other universes as well? When you sat there looking up, and now when you know, with the benefit of years behind you now, do you get a sense of, wow, where do we fit into all of this? Give me some perspective here.
That's kind of what we're examining. Where do we fit in here? Out of all of these billions of, we thought were stars or galaxies, really. Out of all these billions of galaxies that have billions of solar systems, are we it? Is that all there is?
What do you think? Are we alone? I mean,
no. We're only alone in this section of the Milky Way.
This zip code.
Exactly. I think that life has evolved in many other places. The question of, is there a God? on the other side of that, if there isn't a God, is it just a cosmic crapshoot?
And that's the question. Is there a room for science and faith to come together, a belief in God and a greater understanding of science?
We've spoken to a religious man who was a scientist. It's in the first episode, and you'll hear what he has to say about it. He was a scientist first, and then he shifted over, and he said the two are compatible.
Fluoride. Dentists say that drinking it can protect your teeth against cavities. Cities and towns all across the world actually dump it into the water supply, hoping to indiscriminately medicate the population through their tap water faucets. The official story on fluoride sounds wonderful. Drink the stuff and you won't get cavities, we're told. It's a nice story. But there's another side to this story, a side you're never told. And it starts with the astonishing but verifiable fact that nearly all the fluoride dripped into municipal water supplies isn't naturally occurring fluoride at all. In fact, it's actually a combination of hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride. These two chemicals are considered highly toxic by the EPA. They're actually classified as hazardous waste, and when packaged for transportation, they must be labeled as poison and handled by workers wearing industrial safety gear. So, what are hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride, and where do they come from? That's the part of this story that you probably won't believe. That is, not until you check it out.
On the full depth of the betrayal of the American people. The release of the full and unredacted report, like pulling on a thread of a poorly made jacket, will help to fall away the cloak of lies surrounding this act of genocide and treason. It will bring down not only the degenerate House of Saud, but the House of Bush, the House of Clinton, and the House of Obama, who has been a willing accomplice in this crime against humanity.
I totally agree with you, and you're definitely the caller of the day, my friend. That's why I should just have hours every day where it's just callers getting to say what they want on air and not me babbling around. Trump came out and said, hey, Jeb, shut up about me not being able to run the military. 9/11 happened on your brother's watch. And he said, how dare you? He was president, okay, but don't blame him. Well, we know the 28 pages from Senator Graham and Senator Jones that have seen it, and military we've had on that have seen it. It says Saudi Arabia ran the attacks to blame Iraq. That was always the plan. And then our own government, bare minimum, stood down. And, of course, it was more than that. But we have the fact that it now, to a great extent, was an inside job. Now we have the Daily Mail, Reuters, and others. Smoking gun emails reveal Blair's deal in blood with George W. Bush over Iraq war was forged a year before the invasion had even started. Now, we have the White House and Downing Street memos. This is another memo now. And in it, and this is confirmed, in it, they knew that Saddam wasn't involved and just wanted to invade, and they killed over 1 million Iraqis. So this shows they framed a whole country for a false flag attack and did it, so Saudi Arabia that runs ISIS could now take over. This is a Wahhabist Sunni operation to take over the Middle East that our government's working with, and so they attack us and then we attack their enemies. You can see the setup, and it's becoming clearer and clearer. And so you're absolutely right. So thank God it's all starting to come out. Closing comment on that.
Well, absolutely. There's lots of roots to the evil that we see unfolding around us, but the single biggest lie upon which this ever-increasing tyranny that we see unfolding around us is built upon is the lie of 9/11.
That's right. Give up all your liberties, we'll keep you safe. 14 years later, Al-Qaeda and ISIS are 20 times bigger than they were, and more of our freedoms are being taken. Absolutely great point. God bless you. We should all pray that false flags be exposed, because they're going to keep doing it. Oklahoma City was purely staged by the government. We don't know about 9/11 from my deep research, and I'm one of the main guys, if you're a new listener, that got into all that. We know the official story isn't real. We know the government protected the patsies, probably were patsies. And we know that elements of the government were involved, and other foreign governments as well.
Putting away the softballs, Univision's Jorge Ramos brought what's been missing during Dem debates. Hard-hitting questions.
On the night of the attacks in Benghazi, you sent an email to your daughter, Chelsea, saying that Al-Qaeda-like group was responsible for the killing of the Americans. However, some of the families claim that you lied to them. Secretary Clinton, did you lie to them?
Just to refresh, here's what Hillary Clinton and President Obama said.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
It was a crude and disgusting video. It sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video.
The problem is, they both knew it wasn't the video. Hillary Clinton said so in her own email.
You're looking at an email you sent to your family. Here's what you said. At 11 o'clock that night, approximately 1 hour after you told the American people it was a video, you say to your family, 2 officers were killed today in Benghazi by an Al-Qaeda-like group. And most significantly, the next day, within 24 hours, you had a conversation with the Egyptian Prime Minister. You told him this: we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest.
So what did Mrs. Clinton have to say about being called a liar by a Benghazi victim's mother, Patricia Smith?
You know, look, I feel a great deal of sympathy for the families of the 4 brave Americans that we lost at Benghazi. And I certainly can't even imagine the grief that she has for losing her son. But she's wrong. She's absolutely wrong. At the time I emailed with my daughter, a terrorist group had taken credit for the attacks on our facility in Benghazi.
Hang on. Let's take that back.
We know, not we think, not it might be, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest.
Within 16, 18 hours, they rescinded taking credit. They did it all on social media. And the video did play a role. We have captured one of the lead terrorists, and he admits it was both a terrorist attack and it was influenced by the video.
So which is it? First you say it was from a video, but in an email you claim it was a planned attack. Now it's both? Do you trust Hillary Clinton?
State Department experts knew the truth.
The panel has been discussing
the truth.
Spirituality and the forces of God. But I also believe that there are 2 forces that are here with us. That we do have our God that we can depend on, but there's also a power of darkness that we do need to be aware of.
One of the mistakes that human beings make is believing that there is only one way to live, that we don't accept that there are diverse ways of being in the world, that there are millions of ways to be a human being,
please God?
And many ways, but many paths to what you call God. And her path might be something else, and when she gets there, she might call it the light. But her loving and her kindness and her generosity brings her, if it brings her to the same point that it brings you, it doesn't matter whether she called it God along the way or not.
And I guess the danger that could be in that, I mean, it sounds great on the onset, but if you really look at both sides,
there couldn't possibly be just one way. What about Jesus? What about Jesus?
You say there isn't only one way. There is one way and only one way, and that is through Jesus.
There couldn't possibly be with the millions of people in the world. There couldn't possibly be.
Because you say, you intellectualize it and say there isn't. If you don't believe that, you're all buying into the lie.
But that means you're right. Do you think that if you are somewhere on the planet, if you're somewhere on the planet and you never hear the name of Jesus, you never hear the name of Jesus, but yet you live with a loving heart, you lived as Jesus would have had you to live, you lived for the same purpose that Jesus came to the planet to teach us all, but you are in some remote part of the earth and you never heard the name of Jesus. You cannot get to heaven, you think?
And that is covered in the scriptures, too. People are talked about
Truly, that. God knows the heart.
Does God care about your heart, or God care about if you call his son Jesus?
Well, you know, Oprah, Jesus cannot come back until that gospel is preached in the 4 corners of this earth. So, figure it out.
Okay, I can't get into a religious argument with you.
It's not religion.
not doing it will be catastrophic. We'll have 8 degrees, we'll be 8 degrees hotter in 30 or 40 years, and basically none of the crops will grow. Most of the people will have died, and the rest of us will be cannibals. Civilization will have broken down. What the few people who are left will be living in a failed state like Somalia or Sudan, and living conditions will be intolerable. The droughts will be so bad there'll be no more corn growing. But not doing it is suicide. Just like dropping bombs on each other, nuclear weapons is suicide. So we've got to stop doing the two suicidal things, which are hanging on to our nuclear weapons and globalism. And then after that, we've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff. But if there were less people, they'd be using less stuff.
Mr. Turner, I was wondering if you think it's a good idea to reduce 90% of the population because we are being overpopulated by a lot of... 90%. 80? Prince Philip said 80, sir. I go with 85.
I think 2 billion is about right.
Right, me too. Thank you.
One-child family.
Exactly. One-child policy.
Then, can you speak about your population control, saying you want to reduce the population to 95%? Extermination? You said you want a one-child policy, but you have 5 kids. Doesn't make any sense.
The youngest one is 40 years old.
All right, but understand.
The world population then was 3 million.
But that's what the Nazis did with eugenics, sir. They wanted to destroy humanity.
Pay detail.
You don't got to tell you. I'm not even doing nothing wrong. Can you tell me what I did wrong?
You don't have permission here.
Yes, I do. I'm a legitimate person. I'm on the list, so I'm not even doing nothing illegal.
You talk to the management.
All right. Ted Turner, you're an enemy of humanity, and your Nazi-like policies won't be tolerated. I don't want to give you any trouble. I'm just trying to ask my questions, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm leaving, okay? Don't worry about that. Why do you want to destroy humanity, sir? You're an enemy of humanity.
Why do you support eugenics?
The Nazis support eugenics too. I'm on a public sidewalk and you cannot touch me. No, this is a public sidewalk. Get her. I'm just talking to him.
I got to step to the back.
So what'd you do at the Bilderberg group? That's where you decided your eugenics policy?
Why do you support the population, Ted?
Is it when the Bilderberg? Just like the Nazis that exterminated the Jews with eugenics. You're doing the same thing nowadays, trying to exterminate the normal people.
Is 80% depopulation enough? Is 80% enough? 90%? And who's going to decide who lives and dies?
Be ashamed of yourself. You are not our leader. National sovereignty will prevail, and we will not have a new world order. We won't have a one world government. The elite won't be in charge because the people and national sovereignty will always prevail, sir.
Eugenics is no laughing matter, sir. Depopulation is no laughing matter.
Your silence shows complicity, sir.
Ted, who's going to decide who lives and dies over your eugenics population program?
You're no better than a Nazi.
The race to be the Secretary General of the United Nations is clandestinely underway. The second term of current Secretary General, former South Korean Foreign Minister Ban Ki-moon, comes to an end on December 31st, 2016. Today's United Nations has mutated from its supposed noble peacekeeping 1945 birth under FDR's United Nations Charter.
And I am confident that the Congress and the American people will accept the results of this conference as the beginnings of a permanent structure of peace.
Into a new world order antagonizing behemoth, waiting in the wings to crush the sovereignty of nations across the globe. So who will lead the criminally immune New World Order's IMF-backed intergovernmental planetary organization, emboldened by the rollout of the Department of Justice's handover of local police to the United Nations Global Police Stasi convolution via the Strong Cities Network, or the final word afforded it by Obama's unconstitutional Trans-Pacific Partnership, where, for example, scenarios such as these will begin to be played out as The Atlantic reported a Vietnamese company that owns 15 restaurants in San Francisco files a lawsuit saying that the pay increase violates the investor protection provisions of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, recently approved by Congress. The lawsuit is not in a federal or state court, but instead will be heard by 3 private arbitrators. The United States government is the sole defendant. Who will drop the United Nations green agenda-fueled hammer, continuing Obama's war on coal? Who will be the one to ramp up the initiatives of Agenda 21? Who will be the face of the New World Order's final rollout as the curtain is finally lifted? Quite possibly one of the usual New World Order dupes.
Of a New World Order.
Barack Obama, Tony Blair, Angela Merkel, or Bill Clinton. Rumors of Barack Obama's interest have already created rumblings abroad. The Kuwaiti daily Al Jazeera report that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has heard the rumor and is recruiting the Persian Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, new allies in fear of Iran, to cut the president off at the pass. The Jerusalem Post reports that its sources close to Mr. Netanyahu do not deny the speculation that the prime minister aims to torpedo the Obama project. These friends say Mr. Netanyahu thinks Mr. Obama's presidency has been characterized by moving closer to the Muslim Brotherhood, toppling the regime of Hosni Mubarak, and by attempts to ally himself with political Islam. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who stepped down last year as a UN representative to the Middle East Quartet of Special Mediators from the US, EU, and Russia, is now on the United Nations list of candidates, along with former United States President Bill Clinton, who has been drooling over the United Nations Secretary General position for well over 10 years. The latest candidate to long for greener totalitarian pastures is German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Under heavy fire for the glaring rape of Germany by hordes of protected jihadist refugees, Merkel now says that she does not want to complete her full term as German Chancellor and is planning to resign before elections due in 2017. The German leader is aiming to become the first chancellor to leave of her own accord since 1949. And is interested in a new role as United Nations Secretary General or President of the EU, Spiegel magazine reported. The global banker's stooge the United Nations General Assembly installs will join the ranks of past UN Secretary Generals, including Nazi war criminal Kurt Waldheim and Egypt's Boutros Ghali, the man responsible for supplying weapons for the 1994 Rwanda genocide. As the clock ticks nearer
honest with you, and I don't think anybody on talk radio, I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to ever say this out loud, but I wonder if I'm the only one that feels this way. You know, it took me about a year to start hating the 9/11 victims' families. It took me about a year. And I had such compassion for them, and I really, I wanted to help them, and I was behind, let's give them money, let's get started, all of this stuff. And I really didn't, all the 3,000 victims' families, I don't hate all of them. I hate probably about 10 of them. But when I see, 9/11 victim family, on television or whatever, I'm just like, oh, shut up. I'm so sick of them because they're always complaining, and we did our best for them. And again, it's only about 10. But the second thought that I had when I saw these people and they had to shut down the Astrodome and lock it down, I thought, I didn't think I could hate victims faster than the 9/11 victims. These guys, when you see, and it's really sad, we're not hearing anything about Mississippi. We're not hearing anything about Alabama. We're hearing about the victims in New Orleans. This is a 90,000 square mile disaster site. New Orleans is 181 square miles. 108.2% of the disaster area is New Orleans. And that's all we're hearing about are the people in New Orleans. Those are the only ones that we're seeing on television are the scumbags Again, and it's not all of the people in New Orleans. Most of the people in New Orleans got out. It's just a small percentage of those who were left in New Orleans or who decided to stay in New Orleans, and they're getting all of the attention. It's exactly like the 9/11 victims' families. There's about 10 of them that are spoiling it for everybody.